She lost it. She has actually lost it. Claressa Shields is 9 days out from the biggest fight of her career against Kaye at State Farm Arena. The middleweight unification is sitting right there on August 15th, and instead of locking into the gym and letting her hands do the talking, the woman who calls herself the GWOT is posting fake AI pregnancy photos of a body that is not hers, attached to a man who is still legally married to somebody else, while an entire city she is supposed to be selling tickets to is turning on her in real time. This is not a situation that is heading somewhere. This is a situation that has already arrived and nobody around her has the courage to tell her the building is on fire. And the reason nobody saw this specific collapse coming is because everybody was watching the wrong fight. You thought the story was Claressa versus Kaye. You thought the story was Claressa versus Remy Ma. The real story, the one that is quietly destroying her brand 9 days before she walks to the ring, is Claressa versus the version of Claressa she keeps posting online, and that fight she is losing by knockout in every round. There are two timelines running side by side right now, and they are not the same story. There is the athletic timeline, where a legitimate all-time great is preparing to defend belts against a unified champion in Atlanta on August 15, 2026. And then there is the parallel timeline, where the same woman is uploading ChatGPT baby bumps, calling a legally married man her husband on camera, body-shaming a beloved Atlanta radio personality on air, and begging Aloe Yoga for a sponsorship 1 week and torching her likability the next. Those two timelines are on a collision course, and when we get to the Atlanta piece of this, the part where the city she needs to sell out is quietly deciding whether to show up for her at all, you are going to understand why this is not gossip. This is a business collapse happening in slow motion, and I promise you the moment we get to what Miss Shyneka actually said and how Claressa responded, you will see exactly why the next 9 days matter more than any round she has ever fought. Drop your thoughts in the comments, hit like, and subscribe. Let's get into it. Let me set the whole board for you because if you are new to this, you need every piece before we start swinging. Claressa Shields, 17-0, undisputed, arguably the greatest women's boxer in history, is scheduled to fight Kaye on August 15, 2026, at State Farm Arena in Atlanta for the unified WBC and WBA middleweight titles. That is the athletic reality. That is the resume. That is what should be the only thing on her mind right now. Fighters in the last 2 weeks of camp do not do interviews they do not have to do. They do not post content that opens up a second front. They do not pick fights with radio hosts in the market they are trying to sell tickets in. They lock in, they cut weight, they shut the world out, and they let the promotional machine do the promotional work. That is the playbook. That is what every serious champion has done since the beginning of boxing. Claressa is doing the opposite of the playbook. She is publicly attached to Papoose, a rapper pushing 50 who is still legally married to Remy Ma, and until a judge signs the papers, that is not a technicality, that is the legal status. Complex reported it, the Shade Room reported it, everybody with a functioning inbox has reported it. Remy has said on record that the divorce is going to take longer than people think because there is a financial dispute over what she is entitled to, and until that dispute is resolved, there is no divorce. That is not Claressa's opinion. That is not my opinion. That is the state of Georgia and the state of New York's opinion, which happen to be the only two opinions that legally count. On top of that legal fog, Claressa keeps announcing pregnancies that are not happening. She said she wanted to be pregnant by 30. That did not happen. She said 100% she was having a baby in 2026. That has now been publicly walked back to 2027. She has posted AI-generated pregnancy photos where the body in the picture does not look like her body, the face barely looks like her face, and the whole composition looks like something a fan account made in 5 minutes on a free app. She has also participated in a group photo where she and her friends stuffed balloons under their shirts to mimic a real pregnant friend's baby shower. The stakes here are enormous. Financially, this is a fighter whose pay-per-view ceiling depends on being taken seriously as a champion, not laughed at as a meme. Culturally, this is a boxer who is on track to be spoken about in the same sentences as Ann Wolfe and Layla Ali, and instead she is trending for fake baby bumps. Reputationally, this is a woman who called herself the greatest of all time, selling that greatness to an audience that is increasingly asking whether the greatest of all time posts ChatGPT belly photos 9 days before a title fight. And the question that this entire video is going to answer is very simple. How does a fighter this talented, this decorated, this historically significant, lose the plot this completely, this publicly, this close to a title defense, and what is the machine that lets it keep happening? Let us start with what everybody can see with their own eyes, because before we get into the deeper stuff, the surface is already devastating. Piece of evidence number 1. The AI pregnancy photos. Claressa posted an image of herself, or what was supposed to be herself, with a full pregnant belly, captioned in a way that suggested Facebook was tagging her in pregnancy content, and the picture is not her. The proportions are wrong. The face is smoothed out in that specific AI way where the skin has no texture. The body composition is not the body composition of a professional middleweight boxer 9 days out from a fight, and the cakes, as the culture would say, do not match the cakes. She did not clarify it was AI in the caption right away. She let it float in the algorithm, let people react, let the engagement rack up, and only then did the story shift into damage control. That is not an accident. That is a content strategy. It is just an incredibly bad one for somebody in fight camp. Piece of evidence number 2. The Breakfast Club interview from earlier this year, where she was directly asked how much longer she was willing to be in a relationship with, quote, somebody else's husband. 93,000 views on that clip alone, and the number keeps climbing. Her answer was not calm, was not measured, was not the answer of someone who feels secure in her position. It was defensive, it was combative, and it made the very point she was trying to disprove. When people are secure, they do not need to explain the same thing every 3 weeks. When people are secure, they let the paperwork do the talking. She is not letting the paperwork do the talking because the paperwork is not talking in her favor yet. Piece of evidence number 3. The Miss Shyneka interview. Miss Shyneka, a beloved radio personality in Atlanta with real community roots, asked her a version of the same question the Breakfast Club asked, framed slightly differently, essentially inquiring about the timeline of the relationship and the marriage status. Claressa did not answer it like a professional. She went in. She reportedly called Miss Shyneka out of her name, took shots at her body, referred to her as Miss Piggy in follow-up content, and turned a routine radio hit into a genuine Atlanta community incident. Miss Shyneka has fans. Miss Shyneka has friends in the industry. Miss Shyneka is not somebody a fighter who needs to sell out State Farm Arena in 9 days should be picking a war with. And Claressa did it anyway. On air. On camera. On the record. Piece of evidence number 4. The Met Gala AI photos from earlier in the year, which the Shade Room covered extensively. Claressa posted a set of AI-generated images of herself at the Met Gala. She was not at the Met Gala. She was never at the Met Gala. The images were fabricated in software, and the internet lit her up over it. That was months ago. That was the warning. That was the moment where a thoughtful team would have sat her down and said no more AI content, no more fabricated imagery, no more manufactured moments. Instead, she doubled down. The pregnancy photos are the sequel to the Met Gala photos, and the pattern is now undeniable. This is not a slip. This is a habit. And habits are what define a public identity, whether the person having them realizes it or not. Piece of evidence number 5, and I want you to sit with this one, because this one might be the most damaging of all. The Ariel Helwani interview. Helwani, who does not typically play, asked her about Remy's music. He asked her, essentially, whether she was familiar with Remy's catalog. And Claressa did not have an answer. She fumbled. She said something to the effect that she did not really know Remy's songs. That is not a small thing. That is a woman who is publicly involved with a rapper whose ex-wife is one of the most respected female MCs in New York history, and she cannot name a song. That clip is on the internet forever. That clip is what people are going to send to their friends when they want to explain what is wrong with this whole situation without having to type a single word. And I know some of you are already typing in the comments that this is just internet noise, that fighters have always had drama in camp, that this does not affect what happens in the ring. And oh, do I have more for you? Because the internet noise part of this story is the shallow end of the pool. What is happening underneath it, in the industry, in the community, in the rooms where the real decisions about her career are being made, is a completely different conversation, and the Papoose stans are really not going to like this one. When we get to the part where Atlanta itself starts making its position known, and the part where the industry figures around Remy start subtly picking a side without ever having to say it out loud, you are going to see why the 9 days between now and August 15th are the most important 9 days of Claressa Shields' commercial career. Not her athletic career. That is a separate thing. Her commercial career. The part that pays the bills. The part that makes the fights profitable. The part that determines whether there is a fight after this one. Let us get into the cultural layer. Because the surface is bad, but the cultural signal is worse. Cultural evidence piece 1. Remy Ma is currently everywhere and Papoose is nowhere. This year, Remy has been on the Angie Martinez show. She has been on Drink Champs with Fat Joe and Jadakiss. She has been photographed at Nick's playoff runs. She has been on stages with French Montana, with Ross, with Baby, with the entire lineup of New York rap royalty that actually still moves the needle. Where is Papoose during any of this? He is not there. He is not on the guest lists. He is not on the podcasts. He is not being invited into the rooms where the culture is being decided. Busta Rhymes still speaks kindly of him because Buster is a gentleman and Buster does not pick sides. Outside of Buster, name the last major New York figure who publicly co-signed Papoose in the last 12 months. You cannot, because it did not happen. The city has made its decision quietly, and the decision is not in his favor. Cultural evidence piece 2. The Atlanta ticket problem. This is real, and this is happening right now. There are people in the comments of Miss Shyneka's clips, verified Atlanta residents, saying they are not buying tickets to the August 15th fight. Not because they do not respect Claressa as a boxer. They do. Because they cannot bring themselves to financially support a woman who spent an hour on the radio insulting somebody they consider a friend of the community. This is not 1 or 2 comments. This is a wave. And in a market where women's boxing is still building its ticket base, where every seat matters, where the pay-per-view number is the only number that matters after fight night, that kind of community cold shoulder is not a small problem. That is a business problem that could show up on the scorecards of her career for the next 3 fights. Cultural evidence piece 3. The Papoose interview cadence versus the Claressa interview cadence. Papoose did a full-length sit-down with Vlad TV where he spoke about the marriage, spoke about the timeline, and did it in a measured, careful, almost lawyerly tone. He did not brag. He did not clown Remy. He did not throw fuel on it. Claressa's interviews are the exact opposite. She is loud, she is defensive, she is picking specific fights with specific people, she is going in on radio hosts, she is name-checking her hubby, she is describing her punani as holding him hostage on air. Whether or not that is authentic Claressa is not the point. The point is the contrast. The rapper is behaving like the boxer, and the boxer is behaving like the rapper, and everybody watching the two of them can feel that role reversal even if they cannot articulate why it feels off. Cultural evidence piece 4. The 50 Cent factor. Claressa has been directly and indirectly connected to 50 over the last 2 years, sometimes as a promotional partner, sometimes as a target, sometimes as an ally. In her most recent Power 105 interview, she talked about 50, she talked about the industry, she talked about her positioning in the culture, and the moments where she was most confident were the moments where she was talking about boxing. The moments where she was least confident, where she was defensive and reactive, were the moments about her relationship. That contrast matters because it tells you where her actual identity is versus where she is performing an identity. She is a fighter. She is a genuinely great fighter. She is not, and has never been, an entertainer or a rap-adjacent lifestyle figure, and every time she tries to be one, the seams show. Cultural evidence piece 5. The deleted post pattern. Multiple times over the last 6 months, Claressa has posted content, taken heat for it, and quietly removed it once the pile-on became too intense. That is a specific behavior. That is the behavior of somebody who is not receiving good advice from the people around her, or who is receiving good advice and ignoring it. Elite athletes with elite teams do not post and delete. They do not need to. Their teams review, their teams filter, their teams protect the brand. When you see a post and delete pattern from a champion, it tells you the infrastructure around that champion is either broken or being overruled by the champion herself. Either scenario is bad for business. And I want to be fair for a second, because credibility requires it. I know somebody in the comments is going to say she is a fighter, not a media professional. She should be allowed to be a person. She should be allowed to make mistakes online without it being a career issue. That is a real argument, and I understand it. But here is where it falls apart. She is not being asked to be a media professional. She is being asked to not actively torch her own promotional runway 9 days before a title defense. That is a much lower bar. That is a bar that Kaye Scott is currently clearing without breaking a sweat, because Kaye Scott is at home doing the work and letting the fight sell itself. The bar is not perfection. The bar is do not light the building on fire in the week you are trying to fill it. And Claressa is not clearing that bar right now. Now here is where the gear shifts, because everything I have set up to this point is culture and vibes and community reactions, and if that was all this was, it would be a bad week for her and nothing more. But it is not just a bad week. There is a systemic layer underneath this that nobody is talking about, and once you see it, you cannot unsee it, and it explains everything. The systemic reality of women's boxing in 2026 is that the entire genre lives or dies on the marketability of maybe 5 or 6 fighters. That is it. There is not a deep bench of pay-per-view names in women's boxing. There is Katie Taylor. There is Amanda Serrano. There is Alicia Baumgardner. There is Savannah Marshall. There is Claressa. And that is essentially the top tier. Everybody else is fighting for undercard money and regional titles, which means the commercial value of women's boxing is concentrated in a very small number of hands, and any damage to any one of those hands damages the entire economy of the sport. When Claressa's likability drops, it does not just cost Claressa. It costs the promoters who bet on Claressa. It costs the streaming platforms that paid for the Claressa fights. It costs the sponsors who signed deals that were priced against a projected likability curve. And it costs every other female boxer whose pay is being negotiated against Claressa's numbers as the benchmark. The second systemic layer is the DAZN streaming economics. Her August 15th fight is on DAZN. DAZN's model in 2026 is subscription-heavy, meaning they need to justify subscriber retention around marquee events. Every marquee event is priced against a specific subscriber acquisition and retention model. When the star of the marquee event is generating negative press cycles instead of positive press cycles, the acquisition curve flattens. Fewer new subscribers come in. Fewer existing subscribers stay. The math of the whole event gets uglier, and the next contract Claressa signs is written against that math. This is not speculation. This is how the streaming economy has worked since the platforms took over from traditional pay-per-view. Every viral moment is priced. Every insult on a radio show is priced. Every AI pregnancy photo is priced. And the person doing the pricing is not a fan. The person doing the pricing is somebody in a room at a streaming platform with a spreadsheet, and that spreadsheet has been getting darker every week. The third systemic layer is the sponsorship pipeline. She has publicly asked Alo Yoga to sponsor her. She has cultivated relationships with fitness and lifestyle brands. She wears branded gear and training footage. That entire pipeline runs on one thing and one thing only, which is brand safety. Brands do not sponsor athletes who are unpredictable in interviews, who insult radio personalities, who post AI content that generates community backlash. They just do not. There is an entire industry of brand safety analysts whose job it is to score athletes on exactly this kind of behavior, and Claressa's score has been trending in the wrong direction for months. The Alo deal is not going to happen at the number she wants. The next fitness deal is not going to happen at the number she wants. The lifestyle pipeline that a champion of her level should be tapping into freely is closing up, one meeting at a time, and she is doing it to herself in real time on Instagram Live. Put those 3 systemic layers together, and what you get is a picture that is not about a fighter having a bad month. What you get is a picture of a champion who is systematically undermining the commercial infrastructure that her own athletic greatness built. And the tragedy of this, the actual tragedy, is that she does not have to. She could be quiet. She could let the fight sell itself. She could let Kaye Scott run her mouth in the pre-fight press and just show up on August 15th and do what she does. She has the belts. She has the record. She has the resume. She could win by silence. Instead, she is losing by volume. And here is the reveal, the part that ties every single thread of this video together. The part one promised you at the top when I said the real story is Claressa versus the version of Claressa she keeps posting. The truth bomb is this. Claressa Shields is not being publicly humiliated by Remy Ma. She is not being publicly humiliated by Miss Shyneka. She is not being publicly humiliated by Ariel Helwani or the Breakfast Club or the Atlanta community or the New York rap establishment. Claressa Shields is being publicly humiliated by Claressa Shields, and every single piece of evidence in this video traces back to a decision she made, a post she uploaded, a comment she typed, an interview she went into unprepared. Nobody set her up. Nobody framed her. Nobody edited her out of context. She did all of this to herself, on camera, in her own words, with her own hands, on her own accounts, in the exact window of time where the smartest possible move was to say nothing at all. The pregnancy narrative is her narrative. She introduced it. She promoted it. She timelined it publicly, first for age 30, then for 2026, now for 2027, and every walkback made the earlier version look more manufactured. The Papoose relationship is her narrative. She named him. She called him the hubby. She posted the couple's content. She kept the topic alive in every interview by responding to every question about him as if it were a personal attack instead of a routine media question that any reasonable public figure with that relationship structure would be asked. The Miss Shyneka war is her narrative. Miss Shyneka asked her a question a professional would have deflected in one sentence, and Claressa turned it into a multi-day content cycle about body shaming an Atlanta community figure. The AI content is her narrative. Nobody made her post the Met Gala photos. Nobody made her post the pregnancy photos. Nobody made her post the Barbie doll version of her and Papoose that does not look like either of them. Every single one of those decisions was hers, and every single one of those decisions was made in the exact window where the correct decision was to post absolutely nothing at all. The reason this is the biggest reveal of this video is because it means the fix is also hers. There is no promoter who can fix this. There is no manager who can spin this. There is no publicist who can rewrite the last 6 months. The only person who can course correct is the person who caused it, and the evidence of the last 6 months suggests she is not going to. She likes the attention. She likes the volume. She has confused engagement for support, and by the time she realizes those are two completely different things, the August 15th number will already be in, the DAZN retention curve will already be measured, the sponsorship meetings will already be over, and the next contract will already be written against numbers that reflect this exact moment. That is what makes this the most damaging kind of self-inflicted damage. It is not a scandal. Scandals can be recovered from. This is a pattern, and patterns get priced in permanently. This is a woman who has spent her entire adult life being told she is the greatest of all time in her sport, and she is finding out this month that greatest of all time is a boxing title, not a personality title. And the two do not automatically transfer. Now let me bring it back to the part that actually matters, because I do not want anyone to walk away from this video thinking Claressa Shields is finished as a fighter. She is not. That is the whole point. Kaye Scott is a serious opponent, but Claressa Shields at 17-0, at her level of discipline in the ring, at her level of technical mastery, is still the most likely woman on planet Earth to have her hand raised on August 15th. The athletic Claressa is intact. The athletic Claressa is doing the work. The training camp footage is real. She is sharp, she is conditioned, she is dangerous. That is the version of her that built the empire, and that version of her has not disappeared. Remy, meanwhile, is doing what winners do when the noise is loud around them. She is quiet. She is working. She is showing up to the Angie Martinez appearances, the Drink Champs episodes, the Fat Joe stages, and she is letting her career do the talking. She is not posting AI photos. She is not calling out radio hosts. She is not begging brands for sponsorships in her captions. She is not describing anybody's punani on live radio. She is letting the work speak, and the work is speaking loudly because the culture is listening. And that is the real contrast one-liner of this entire situation. One woman is announcing her life. The other woman is living hers. One woman is manufacturing attention. The other woman is receiving it. One woman is trying to convince you she is winning. The other woman is winning so obviously that she does not have to say the word. That is the difference between the two paths, and it is the difference every young woman watching this needs to internalize, because Claressa is not a villain in this story. She is a cautionary example. She is a genuinely historic athlete making a completely avoidable set of decisions in public, and the reason we are talking about it is not because we want her to fail. It is because we have seen this movie before, and we know how it ends when nobody around the star has the courage to say enough. The right person is still winning, and that person is not Papoose, and that person is not the Claressa who lives online. The right person, in the athletic sense, is still the Claressa who steps into that ring on August 15th, and I hope she wins. I actually hope she wins. Because a knockout on August 15th is the fastest possible reset for everything I just described. The fight cures a lot. The belts cure a lot. But it only works if she gets out of her own way in the 9 days between now and then, and based on the pattern of the last 6 months, that is a bet I would not take. This is only the start, and I want to be specific about what is coming, because the next 30 days in this story are going to be some of the loudest days women's boxing has had all year. First, we are watching the August 15th gate number. Not the fight result. The gate. How many seats were actually sold? That number is going to tell us, empirically, whether the Atlanta community actually followed through on what the comments were saying, or whether it was a lot of talk that did not translate into ticket refunds. Second, we are watching the Remy divorce filing update. Remy has hinted the process is going to take longer than Papoose has publicly claimed, and the moment that becomes official through court documents, the entire Claressa narrative shifts again. Third, we are watching whether Miss Shyneka responds on air one more time, because if she does, and if her Atlanta radio family closes ranks around her, that story will roll straight into Fight Week and it will not stop rolling. Fourth, we are watching the sponsorship announcements, or the absence of them. If Aloe or any other lifestyle brand quietly declines to sign, we will not hear about it publicly, but we will see it in the negative space where an announcement should have been. So subscribe right now, because I am going to be covering every single one of those developments as they happen. The comments on this video are going to become the fastest place on the internet to track the Atlanta side of this, so drop your thoughts down there, and if you live in Atlanta specifically, type the word Atlanta so I know how the community is really reading this. If enough of you do it, I will make a dedicated follow-up video breaking down the ticket sales, the community reaction, and the Fight Week fallout hour by hour. And if you thought this video was heavy, wait until you see what I have coming next, because there is a story sitting inside the Papoose and Remy Ma divorce documents that connects directly to a name in the industry that nobody has said out loud yet. A name that appears in both the paperwork and the reason this divorce has stalled for so long, and when I break down that connection in the next video, you are going to understand why this whole situation was never actually about Claressa at all. She was the distraction. The real story is the one hiding behind her, and I am pulling it into the light next. Click that next video the second this one ends. You are not going to want to miss the moment those two dots finally connect.